part of it has to do with the globalist agenda. And a lot of people don't realize this. You know, in God's way, he really wants us to be governed as a nation. And the truth is he gave us an example of a nation. It was the nation of Israel. And, you know, he created this nation by pulling them out of the land of Egypt and then taking them to the promised land. And when they went, he gave them three things. He gave them, you know, a culture, he gave them a religion, and he gave them borders. And so they had a nation. And so when people are in nations, they're safer, they are, you know, with people that are culturally similar to themselves, and they feel good and the economy works well. Well, what's happened is as technology has mushroomed, a lot of what used to be American companies don't consider themselves American anymore. They consider themselves global companies. And so as a result, they are all in favor of these policies that really pull down the power of nations and the control of nations and the borders of nations so that they can make more money, you know, globally. And it really isn't healthy for communities because a lot of local businesses have been really run over. And, you know, COVID is the best example of that, where, you know, the big box stores can stay open, but the small little boutique stores can't stay open because somehow they're less safe. And so COVID, you know, minted 40 billionaires by having these, you know, nationwide and really international medical policies, all kind of built around the COVID jabs, and then you know, small businesses were just crushed, and you know, people that had these small businesses couldn't open. So that's kind of the big picture I talk about in the book. I do go into some ideas of what people can do to protect themselves, because there's two aspects to the counterpunch. It's, yes, you need to counterpunch in your community, and we need to have, you know, more small business friendly policies. We need to have lower taxes on the middle class. We need to have the ability of families to build a nest egg. Taxes have to be low enough that they can actually, you know, get some wealth. And you know, the new thing that is that, you know, people are just leasing homes. I mean, we have entire neighborhoods out here in Phoenix. They build homes. They used to put those homes for sale. Now the entire neighborhood's for lease, and they're owned by BlackRock and Vanguard and huge companies. And so that doesn't give a family an opportunity to build wealth. So I talk generally about government policy, but there's also a unique individual sense that as a family or as anyone needs to save money, you know, lower debt, and really build a firm foundation. And then they need to be generous to Jesus through giving. So those are kind of the pillars that I think are important in my own financial life. But I think people will be blessed as a result of following God's plan for finances.
Yes, you know, it makes me think of a global initiative they talk about, and that Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum says you'll own nothing and be happy. You're talking about living in a leased house. You don't really own the house. BlackRock owns the house. BlackRock controls the corporations. If you don't go with their ESG, their DEI, all their scores, you don't get the loan. We were just, you know, in Europe, and you couldn't get on the plane without your facial recognition. And same thing with buying clothing there, buying food there. And so it could come to the place where we see exactly what China has, a social credit score where you don't get to buy or sell or have anything if you aren't part of it.
They've just started that in the United States. I went through the TSA pre-check recently, and they were photographing everybody as they went through and using facial recognition for TSA pre-check. So it isn't something just abroad. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. But speaking of ownership, I remember an article back in the 2008 crash that BlackRock, at that time, I saw an article, owned 77,000 rental properties or something they bought when these things crashed. They all came in and bought these things up, which is in direct opposition to what God tells us to do. In fact, in Deuteronomy chapter 28, it says God will establish you in the land He's giving you, and He says you will be a lender, not a borrower. You'll never be established if you're a borrower. Someone can always come and say, hey, that's my property, get out of here. And I always tell people, if you stop making the payment, the rightful owner will come and take the property. There's no peace in that, there's no prosperity in that, there's no inheritance in that, but ownership is God's method. Own territory, take territory, own it. And I always say, you can teach someone to fish, that's great, but I always tell them, own the lake. So own the lake. That way you got fish all the time you want, right? So.
Well, and part of it is, when BlackRock was doing that, they were able to get money from the Federal Reserve for, interest rates of 1% or less sometimes. And so, most Americans, when they borrow on a credit card and they're paying, 18, 19%. And so that's usury, in my opinion.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
And so the system has been built.
Yes.
The bankers, BlackRock, a lot of people don't realize this. The history of BlackRock is it was spun out of Merrill Lynch. Okay. It was part of an investment bank when it originally started. And so they were getting money at extremely low rates, and that's how the elites accumulate all these assets. And so we're seeing this huge wealth disparity that's been growing.
Yes.
Because if you can borrow money at 1% and then turn around and lend it to Americans at 10, 15, 20%, that's a pretty good business. And only the elites can do that because they're making it more and more difficult for Americans to actually qualify for loans and able to own their own home. And so it's really not fair because they're almost giving free money to the elites while they're taxing the middle class to do that.
So you hear the rumors of the digital currency and what's coming and everything. Floyd, we've taught for years, Gary's taught for years about China and the control of finances and what was happening, the wealth transfer and our industry going to China. And we've taught people to get out of debt. We personally practice that as well. But what do you see coming with this digital currency, and how do we prepare? There's so many questions about how we prepare people for that.